I'll try to convince all of you about what I've written here on the first slide, that if you don't innovate, you're going to die. I've been in information technology in shipping all my life. I've been in shipping 45 years, and all of them starting from when I was involved in automation design and installation were entirely focused on how to make ships better and smarter using technology. And after a lifetime dedicating to this, sometimes I wonder if I would have been better, playing guitar and enjoying my other life, which is music. Because it's very difficult to innovate the maritime industry. Yet everything has changed. If you look at our past, and not our so distant past, here I put on the Morse system, but I mean, the Morse system, when I started shipping, was still very much used. I actually had to learn when I was in the Navy about the Morse code. And then we moved to telex, and then the first mobile phone, and then the Nokia, and then the Apple phone. Well, the Apple phone is already 10 years old. The Nokia phone that you see here is 20 years old. The first mobile phone is 30 years old. So in a span of 30 years, things have happened very quickly. They've been revolutionized very quickly. It's not the only example. If you look at transportation, I mean, my father was born that airplanes had just been invented. He was born in 1914. And essentially, we have seen the entire transport system completely revolutionized in 100 years. But even in the future, we are now talking about cars which will be used as pay-as-you-go. As a technical guy, I believe that owning a car is absolutely crazy. It's totally stupid. You own an asset which consumes itself fairly quickly, which costs a lot of money, and which you use 2 hours a day. In Athens, probably 20, but because your traffic is not fantastic. But essentially, you use it to going from A to B, and then you struggle to park it, and then you use it from B to A, and then you struggle to park it. Does it make any sense? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Try to imagine a future where essentially you get out from here and you press your button like Uber, you press a button and the car arrives, no driver, because there is no need for a driver, and essentially you say, bring me home. And you have your own car, but you simply don't have to pay for everything about it. This is coming. This is all of us. None of us here is probably 85. So I think we will all be able to see it happening. And you know that in America it's already happening like this. So things are moving ahead. In shipping, the same thing happened. So we moved over for vessels who were still sailing only 18 years ago with sails, or the Derbyshire class that had 42 crews. And then we went to 17 crew. And it's funny, I was shocked when you showed that some 17% of people think that we are not going to go crewless vessels. In 2007 at a conference I said that ships were going to be crewless. And I think people, I don't know, they probably thought I was nuts. In 2013 I was almost booed. I had a confrontation during a conference and one guy stood up and said, if ships will have no crew, I hope I'll be gone by then. Well, there is absolutely no doubt. Ship will have no crew because there isn't absolutely any need to have crews on board ships. If you really think that to send a ship from Le Havre to New York, you need a crew on board, you've never sailed. And this since more than 10 years. 20 years, I would say. I installed the Actis in 1995 on the ship that I was managing, on the first ship that I was managing. In 1995. We're talking about condition-based maintenance, the one that Mr. Brand was talking about, for instance. I did that in 1988. So we're simply talking about the fact that technology is there, but we don't move very fast. This is the trend. It's going to happen. I'm very sorry for crewing companies. Of course, I can understand that probably they feel, they're going to be cut out of business, but it's a reality. The fact that you simply cover your eyes and you don't want to think about it will not help it. So what happens? We are moving. We think we are technologically aware, but we are the Neanderthal man on the left. What we need to do is really use innovation and move to the right part. And essentially use, again, information technology for what it is supposed to be, manage our vessels in a much better way. Also because as Europeans, I keep saying this for many, many years, and this is only people who have never been to China cannot understand. If we think that as European ship owners we can compete against China, we really don't have any idea of how difficult this is going to be. Because when you go to the Dalian Maritime University, and you find out that they have 22,000 cadets, and what you think is Dalian is instead the university, so essentially the town of Dalian is basically in another side. Where I was the university, which was a town of 22,000, because Dalian is a very small town in China and has 6 million people. And the university has 22,000. There is no way we can compete against them, except by applying technology in a much smarter way than they do. So, of course, here I'm saying, because there are a lot of people that think that they don't need innovation, we can survive, we've always worked this way, we're still a successful company, so who cares? And this is exactly what Nokia used to think. I mean, there was a period in time that Nokia had 85% of the mobile market. 50% in the United States, where they had a competition from BlackBerry. What did they do? They failed to innovate. The graphic on the right, BlackBerry. BlackBerry was the professional choice of mobile phone in the United States. Research in Motion was the most successful Canadian company ever. They basically disappeared. And of course, if you are in the IT industry, you may remember Novell, Lotus, Quattro were perfect. If you are not in the IT industry, you may remember Kodak. Yeah, I think some of you will remember that Kodak was 80% of the photograph business. Or digital, DEC, digital equipment, how they basically dominated the high-level computer market. They all disappeared for a very simple reason. They failed to innovate. They failed to follow, even for technological companies like they were, they simply stood firm. They said, we are too big, we are too good, we are number ones. And they forgot that innovation is the key for survival. So, in shipping, the resistance to change is very big. There is always, resisting to changes is a human attitude. We all like to reach a level where we feel secure, we feel very happy about what we have reached, we know what we're doing, and every challenge to our day-to-day routine is taken as a negative impact, So we don't want to innovate. And because shipping is such an old industry, probably we are the first ones who resisted to innovation. And I've noticed this throughout my career. After all, after 30 years from starting to work with Amos, sometimes today it still happens that I go to a customer who's not using any fleet management system, and I still have to argue to tell him, fleet management solutions, they work. You still need information system on board. You still can make it happen even if you change crews. And they look at me and say, no, you're wrong, I'm right. So what happens is that given the actual condition of the market, whoever has invested has innovated when the market was rich. They're now doing very well. Very well. They're now at least surviving without big problems. Those who have failed to innovate, they don't know where exactly they need to cut costs. They basically try to slash it, but they don't have the means to controls. They don't know how many spares they have on board. They don't know how much fuel really they should be consuming because, they never match, they never compare the fuel consumption one ship to the other to the most minute element, to the 0.1% of consumption. And so what happens is that they basically die. One of the most amazing things that I found in the last 9 years of surviving the crisis like everybody else is that every single company, give or take maybe one or two, every single shipping company which has gone bankrupt in shipping, none of them had a fleet management solution. None of them had a software comparable to Amos, comparable to ShipNet, comparable to Danaos, comparable to Bassnet, and so on, with which to control their costs, to control their engine performance, to control their quality and safety, their documentation, their ISM code, and you name it, one after the other. So the best way to fail is to continue not to innovate. And when we're talking about innovation, you are Greeks, do you know what this is? This is the Antikythera mechanism. You guys had computers on board ships when Americans didn't even know what Greece was. They still don't know today. But essentially, innovation was not something that we created. Innovation has always existed. The problem is how to make use of it and how to continue to make use of it. If you stop using it, if you think that it's normal to have a mobile phone for your own personal use, but not for a professional use, you're basically failing to innovate. And remember the Darwin law, it's not the strongest who survive, but the one who better adapts to change.